Welcome in the latest episode of That SEC Podcast, brought to you by Twisted Tea and My Bookie. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter. And I'm joined, as always, by my cousin Shane, who goes by Big Orange Balls on Twitter. What's up, you old Tissy Hober?
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Oh, doing good, Shane. But really, I want to know how you're doing after that big old walk. And how about this, Shane? There's been so many great comments and interactions, and many people on the YouTube. They've come up with a new title, and I think it's appropriate. It's not a walk of shame. It's a walk of Shane, because most people would not have done what you did, and you're a man of your word.
Yeah,
and you should be proud of that, and it's not shameful, and I don't think it is at all.
No. I mean, obviously, you know, when my wife asked me about this bet, you know, after we're done walking and stuff, she says, you know, don't ever do that again. Terrible idea. You're an idiot. Those sort of things, you know. And then I was like, well, honey, I had no intentions of walking at all. You know, I thought the Tennessee Vols would go down there and win, and they didn't. Better team prevailed. So, you know, I am a man of my word. I'm not always, you know, I mean, you can ask my wife, you know, there's probably moments where I mess up and say stupid stuff. I do it on this show all the time.
I do it constantly as well.
You know what I'm saying? It's like we're human. But, you know, I knew that, honestly, they would never stop, you know, because I'm telling you, them Gator fans came out of nowhere, off the top rope, relentless. You know, I was expecting it, but the laces up, walk big boy, you know, the comments started flowing Saturday, and I was like, damn, I can't. Or forever, every time I post anything, there'll be 40 Gators saying, you liar, you know? So I was like, I got to get out there and do this. But I'm feeling a little better today. I thought, you know, because I'm not used to obviously strenuous exercising, but I always thought like day 3 would be the worst. So last night I was like, I'm gonna be bedridden by day 3, you know. But it's kind of funny how your body does, because this morning I slept probably like 12 hours, no joke. When I got up, I was able to move around. It's the getting up and getting down, you know, getting in the truck, getting out of the truck. My legs about gave out. I went to the post office and I almost just face planted there in the parking lot, because my legs just like, nope, we're not ready, you know. But beyond the blisters and the sunburn and stuff like that, I'm glad I got it done. And again, I appreciate everybody's support. You know, a lot of it was Gator fans, you know, coming out, respect, and so, you know, that's what it's about. You know, we love these college football games. It's always a little bit cooler, a little bit more entertaining when you got something riding on it.
Yeah.
Typically, it's just money. You know, it's usually not 13 miles of walking, but it adds a little bit, and it's going to mean more next year when they play, or the year after. And you know, we got a long season ahead of us, Mike. We got 9 more SEC games, and it's some more action after that. So I'm pumped up, man. And
we got a big one this weekend. A lot of big games, but to break down Ole Miss, Alabama on this episode, we're doing our game of the week interviews. We got Pat Smith from WJOX 3-man front down there, co-creator of the Feinbaum Show, and Michael Katz from the DJ Journal to get both sides of it. So 2 outstanding interviews that we're going to get to here in a minute. But
yes, sir. I also want to throw out Pack the Zoo sent me a Missouri shirt. I appreciate that. Got it. We're going to wear it tomorrow for my picks. You know, I figure my picks have been god-awful, obviously. See the message prior to. But maybe this one gets me back on the right path. So I'm going to have that shirt on tomorrow for the picks. And just want to, again, thank all the Mizzou fans that sent the support as well.
Yeah. Well, before we get to the mailbag, Shane, couple things real quick. One, scary situation. Let's hope for the best here. Greg Brooks, LSU defensive back, former Arkansas defensive back. You know, Sam Pittman came out here on his, Monday press conference and, said, they'll be thinking about him and praying for him. And, when you hear stuff like that, you think it's got to be pretty bad.
Right.
And they've come out and said, so apparently he had a brain tumor.
Oh, she
LSU defensive back. He had to have emergency surgery, and his hope and plan is to play again this year. But who knows with something that serious? So
yeah.
that's a scary situation, and that's not something a lot of people, obviously think a young athlete like this has those kind of issues. But that's one part of being in high level college football. If they can catch these things quick, they take care of it immediately, and that's not something that you think about when I'm going to go play at the SEC. But also outstanding medical treatment that you can be provided. So, let's hope Greg Brooks is back soon and better than ever. You know what?
Yeah. Well, you always hear this. Sometimes kids, they catch something, and normally maybe they wouldn't at home or go. So I think, thoughts and prayers are obviously out there. But yeah, if you're thinking about them, send them some love.
Yeah. And real quick, how about this one, Shane? I sent this to you the other day. Channing Crowder, former Florida linebacker, played for Nick Saban in the NFL, shares a story. I'm trying not to get all crazy on Saban hate here or anything, but I thought this was too good not to share.
Like him. He was a dictator, and there's some dictators in the league right now. He was a dictator. He really didn't. People didn't really like him. One time I was in the bathroom with him, and I asked him, "How's your wife?" Because you can't really connect with Nick Saban. It's Nick Saban. He really doesn't talk to players. I don't think he's called me Channing or Crowder. 2 years I played for him, he called me Gator because he remembered when he was at LSU, I was at Florida, and he told me he drafted me because I whooped LSU's ass when they were 12-1, that national championship year. So we're in the bathroom, and I say, I go start to wash my hands. I look over to him. I said, I'm going to say something to you. Like, I got to say something to the head coach if I'm standing in the bathroom with him. And I said, Coach, how's Terry? And he turned to me and he said, she'll be a lot better if you can cover a effing back on third down. And it made me see how his mind works. I wasn't Channing Crowder. I was MLB1. I was a cog in the system. And so if you know that about a coach and you know that he doesn't want a personal relationship with you, he wants to coach you. And as soon as you tear your ACL or tear your Achilles, he's going to find the next guy to plug into his system and make it work. He's coached so long, he knows you're going to get traded, you're going to get drafted if you're in college, you're going to get hurt, and he's going to try to find the next guy to be in your place and plug and play. Saban's a plug and play guy. That's what he does.
Oh, Mr. Plug and Play here. So, I mean, that's an old story. He's softened.
Yeah.
He's maybe that's not Nick Saban we'd get today, but I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that seems a little planted there, Lane Kiffin, to fit your narrative of the decaying dynasty here. But I don't know. I mean, obviously, that's not a good time to have that video floating around, But I've also heard stories on the opposite side, where, I mean, he does go to a lot of these charities with Miss Terry, and it seems like he does care about people. But at the end of the day, I mean, you brought him there to win games, and he's won a lot of them. So, maybe he's not the player's coach like some, Shane Beamer or Sam Pittman, but neither one of those have championship trophies in their case either, So I don't know. I guess you give some to take some, but that's not a good look right now.
And then one other quick clip. Trent Dilfer, new coach at UAB. They're playing at Georgia.
Which, kind of going back to that, I mean, this is that old scenario, and I don't want to just gloss over that conversation. I don't know if you think I'm an asshole, but it's like doctors. Do I want a doctor that's going to come over there and comfort me and tell me all the stuff, or do I want the best damn surgeon in the country? I think that's what you're weighing, and some people. I got one I'm using in Morristown. You probably know him as a heart doctor over there. The guy's he's an asshole, He'll never sponsor the show. He doesn't even like to buy furniture in his lobby. You know what I'm saying? He's just a top one. But when the ticker stops working, that's the guy I want, answering the call. So I don't know. That's kind of what I feel like coaches. You can get a guy in there and he can be a player's coach. And sometimes you need that if you're not at a place like Alabama or Georgia or LSU, But when you're at one of these lower tier, you may need a player's coach to recruit at a higher level.
Yeah.
And Alabama's not that way. They're always going to recruit at a high level. They need somebody to plug and play. So I don't know. I've kind of taken that one, I guess, two different ways, but that's just my thoughts on it.
I see. You're trying not to be a bad guy. I get it. I get it.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, you know who else isn't a bad guy? Trent Dilfer.
I'm going to ask him next time I see him, though. How's Miss Terry? And I'm going to report what he says to you. You know, be a lot better if you didn't make bad bets on that SEC podcast. You know?
Trent Dilfer is taking his UAB team into Georgia. And I just thought this was great because, of course, Trent Dilfer, he's won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He's seen a lot. Elite 11, ran that camp and all that. The SEC fans, I thought, will really appreciate
played
this.
in a lot of big-time atmospheres like Athens. How do you...
I've never played anything like this. I've been to one SEC game. My daughter's being recruited at University of Alabama, and we went to the Ole Miss Alabama game. And to this day, I think the Kentucky Derby is the coolest thing I've ever been able to go to, live sports. I think it's better than Super Bowls. An SEC football game at night is way better atmosphere than a Super Bowl. I think it's the second coolest thing I've ever been to as a spectator. So I'm personally really excited about going to an SEC game at night. It's different. I mean, their slogan is just means more. It's different. It's true.
So how about it, Shane? Better than the freaking Super Bowl, just a regular season. Yeah, and he's right because, I mean, Super Bowl's kind of dead with they're just corporate now. And it's about the commercials and the halftime and all that BS. But that's quite a statement from a guy going to an SEC. This is almost like, you know what, I'm sensing a theme here, Shane. Everyone that has to go to Athens, they're like, Georgia should have won this championship.
Yeah.
They got the best home field. They got the best fans. They got the best coach. they're just trying to butter up them dogs. You know what?
Oh, yeah. It sounds like an interview, you know, like, hey, SEC, if you need another coach, I'm down here at UAB. You know what I'm saying? As he's padding his LinkedIn page there. But no, he's not wrong. I've been to a lot of sporting events, and I've never been to a Super Bowl. And I hate to say it, I've never been to the Derby, even though it's just right up the road. Those are a couple of ones I'd like to go to, but all the other sports and stuff, it's right there. The only thing I could probably say compare is maybe like Bristol at night. You know, that's always. I'm not even a real big NASCAR fan, but if you've never been to it, you're missing out because it is a pretty cool environment. But other than that, man, it's just. You can't explain it. It's an awesome, even if it's a shitty team. I can remember the first game I ever went to with my grandpa. You know, it was like not even that's when you get your tickets. That's when you take your 7 and 8-year-old grandsons as if it is against a UAB or something like that. But I guarantee you, when you take them there, you've imprinted a memory that kid will never forget.
Yeah. Well, buddy, you ready to get into this mailbag questions?
Yeah, I should have read it. I was worried because I didn't read them last time, and boy, you threw some curveballs at me. So, yeah, I'm ready.
All right, this was from Alex Wood, Shane. How long after the 13-mile walk until cousin Shane got an IV drip of Coors Light? That's what he wants to know.
Well, actually, this is my first beer right here. I thought about doing it yesterday for the show, but I couldn't. I was doing that liquid IV and all that stuff. So I was like, I better just steer clear of beer for a day. But no, this is actually my second one for the day. So I'm back in full force, man.
All right. How about from Dank Broyles? He wants to know, why did Cousin Shane have to jinx Arkansas? What's your agenda?
No agenda. No agenda. I promise, Arkansas. I think the misconception is that I enjoy it. You know, you got to remember, I'm also down $700. You know, I make $100 bet on each one of these locks, and it's not been good, you know, as far as income. But, you know, I thought this is, you know, because we all have those games you go into, you're like, well, this team's going to win.
Yeah.
There's no way. Like, it felt like that with BYU. It felt like, hey, everything I've seen up to this point, there's no reason. And to be honest with you, even coming away from that game, I still feel like Arkansas would beat them 8 other times, even on a neutral field. So But then, I mean, there's part of me is like, damn, I am cursed, you know? And if you notice, I've been kind of bouncing around. I don't want to attack just one fan base because my favorite bet last week was really my Tennessee Vols, you know? And I sacrificed 13 miles of walking on that guy. So I don't know, man. So that's kind of why I've been spreading my love. So expect a different team to be locked down this weekend. But I'm running out of teams, Mike. There's only so many in the SEC.
I did see someone, they said you should lock Vanderbilt every week.
Yeah.
Just, or no, Vanderbilt's opponent, they said, to truly test your powers. And maybe you can get Vanderbilt to the SEC championship. Because they haven't lost a conference game yet.
Well, I will say I have been eyeing that Vandy game, but not for Vanderbilt.
All right, how about this one? I like this one, Shay. You'll really like this.
Yeah.
From Cody Garrett.
Yeah.
If Tennessee gets its shit together and South Carolina is at its absolute best in that game on the 30th at Neyland Stadium, who wins the game and why? Again, he's saying if Tennessee gets better, if South Carolina's at its finest, it's one hell of a game right there.
If it gets better, you know, I'm torn on that because I know what the ceiling for South Carolina is. I don't know what the ceiling is for this Tennessee Vol team. Yeah. I guess you could say Virginia, but even then, there was still plenty of drops down the field. I mean, I didn't have that warm, fuzzy feeling that this is the 22 Vols. So at this moment, I was very cocky, pun intended, all summer long. But I'm kind of backing off of that right now, brother, because if we're getting the best of both of these teams right now, I know how good South Carolina can be. Hell, they just went to Athens and almost pulled off an upset between Georgia, which kicked our ass at last year. So right now, I think I'm leaning more towards South Carolina, and I just tell me I'm wrong. I mean, where have you seen a better? Short of a quarterback change or the offensive line just miraculously getting better when Cooper gets back or something like that. We don't even know if he's going to be back. Somebody's saying October.
Right.
So there's still a lot of question marks, a lot of holes, a lot of concerns up front on that offensive line. There's less of that with South Carolina. So, and our formula is out there on how to beat us, you know.
Yeah.
So that's my concern.
I guess that walk got all the optimism out of you because I was prepared to say, here's why you're wrong, and here's why it's South Carolina. And I think it's Spencer Rattler.
Yeah.
And we've already seen him dice up the same secondary to record numbers. And he's playing even better now.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not as good as that one night, but just better consistently this season than he was last season. And, hell, Legette's fired up. They're trying to get Juice Wells back. He's not going to play this week, but they're hopeful he can play against Tennessee. I think it's optimistic. He probably won't, but I don't know. I mean, that's Tennessee's probably their biggest weakness is the secondary, you know?
Right now.
So
and the third downs, especially.
Right. So I kind of lean South Carolina as well, but same thing. I'm repeating myself on every show I do. Home games, night games, those are going to be a huge, huge factor this season. This game's in Neyland, of course.
Yeah.
And they just announced this week it's going to be a night game. So South Carolina, I don't care how good they're playing, they're walking into a damn buzzsaw.
Yeah.
That these Tennessee fans hate them. Josh Heupel apparently hates them and hates Beamer. I didn't really get that till media days. People started telling us, but
you know what it feels like? 21 Ole Miss. Bring your mustard.
Yeah.
Bring your golf balls. I'll be there. This is the game I'm going to, Mike. This is the game I've got circled. I've been wanting to go to it all year long since they beat us last year. I've been thinking about this game. So, where's the tailgates at, guys? I need to know because I'm coming. I'm coming to this one.
Yeah. All right. How about this? Is a great question from Rocky Topics. Which SEC fan base should be the most optimistic, the most worried, and the most pissed off right now? And I know so you just got these. So I've looked at them and I've written some things down. So I'll give you mine real quick.
Okay.
You let me know. Now, this is the only one I've kind of split into two here because he says most optimistic, but he didn't have any other context. So I don't know if he's talking about winning an SEC and winning a national championship as being optimistic, or just optimistic about the future in general. So again, I'm splitting this up into two. If he's talking SEC and national title, it's got to be Georgia and LSU. Still, as down as I've been on Georgia, I mean, they get guys healthy. I mean, they should roll. So LSU, Georgia, most optimistic if we're talking championships now. Would you say?
Championships, yes. I think so, because that is because of no context.
Right.
First thing I thought of was maybe Kentucky. You know, if you're talking optimism, 3-0, they're starting to figure it out right before SEC play, and then your two toughest opponents, which we thought was the Volunteers of Tennessee and Georgia, well, Alabama. You know, two of those are not as good as we thought they were. So
right.
Now you're looking at, hey, if we beat Georgia, you know, maybe this is our year to go to an SEC championship. I know it sounds crazy, but just the trajectory of that program, I would sprinkle a little optimism coming out of Lexington.
Now, for the future optimistic, I win Auburn.
Yeah.
3-0 Auburn. Before we get into this gauntlet, we might lose some optimism, but the future, incredibly bright.
Yeah.
This will probably throw you for a loop, Shane. And I'm not totally trying to do a 180. I'm not totally on board with this coach, if I'm being 100% honest. But I think it's Florida.
Yeah.
The way they're recruiting and the way they just outcoached Tennessee and the way those fans showed up. You know, they're hungry. They got a tough road ahead. But I'd be feeling pretty optimistic if I'm a Florida fan.
Yeah, no, it's tough not to after last Saturday, you know.
Yeah.
To finally figure we've arrived. Future optimism, though, I think you're pretty excited in South Carolina. We got to see Goggles come out and throw. I don't know, I can't remember his name. Right? Yeah, I mean the kid looked. I mean, if you're talking about future, I always like to see what's behind door number 2. You know.
Yep.
And so the future looks bright over there. I don't know. And the schedule, I think, gets a little bit easier when we go to this non-division thing. So I think their schedules are going to lock in pretty nice. Other optimism, I think you're right. I think it's the Florida Gators. Just because Mizzou's got a couple of, I mean, hell, they're getting some of the best recruits out there. So there's a little optimism up there. But also think about Florida. It's like as long as you keep landing those top 10, top 5 recruiting classes, well, then you can compete with anybody. So, and if they've already figured out with me, I'm going Florida.
How about most worried? I got 2 here.
Most worried. I'm going Arkansas. I just think that I don't know. I don't know where we're at with them. I keep thinking that this is the year that they take that big step forward. But I've been thinking that since COVID, and it doesn't. We just haven't seen it yet. So KJ's gone next year. Rocket's probably gone next year. So what does that team look like moving forward? So I would be a little bit more worried about the future of Arkansas, and not to mention they've been there through and of course, maybe we have too with the Morris years and stuff like that. So that's still looming not too far ago, and we just don't want to go back to that. So a little worried there, and then of course Alabama. I mean, Nick Saban, say what you want, I feel like is fighting for his future. That sounds crazy, but I think people are going to take, if they lose a couple more games throughout this year, I think they're going to have to make some tough decisions down there because it's going to start affecting this recruiting trail. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I had Alabama on here, but I think they could flip that if they pick up some wins.
Yeah.
I think the most worried SEC fan base right now, Mississippi State, because
that's a good one.
We still don't know what we got as a head coach. We may have made a huge mistake at offensive coordinator. I don't know. That if I'm Mississippi State, I'm hitting the panic button. But again, you go on the road, You beat South Carolina, you flip that narrative pretty. That's what I love about all this. We get panicked, and then it can change in a hurry. But Florida fans were panicked 2 weeks ago.
You just need some big wins.
Yeah.
And I guess you could say that about any fan base, but Mississippi State needs that to – I see what you're saying. Because Arnett doesn't woo you at the stand, you know. I mean, I don't have a conversation with him and say, you know what, that guy is going to bring us a title. You know, you're not thinking that, even though he's probably one of the most qualified, you know, defensive minds out there. He's still, you know, he's not fun like the Pirate. He's not fun like Lane Kiffin down the street, you know. There's not a lot of people are talking about Mississippi State right now, and they used to. And you had a little taste of that. So, yeah, I could see where you're coming from.
Now, most pissed off, I got one fan base here as well. Do you want to go? Or you want to hear mine?
Tennessee Volunteers are pissed off. We were there, Mike. We had 11 wins. You know, we're back being talked about, top 5 teams. We got good recruiting classes. We got a hell of athletes around. Our defense is supposed to be better. Joe's supposed to throw 100 yards every time, and we haven't done shit. So they rightfully so needs to be, because some tough decisions are going to need to be made over there, and if they don't, we're going to keep losing.
Yep.
So,
all right, how about this one, Shay, from John Chavis? Not the real John Chavis.
Could be.
Could
the
be.
Chief. Did I ever tell you the Chief story? I told you once, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Alabama used to have a monopoly on superior offensive and defensive line play. Is the dynasty decaying because they don't have the Jimmies and Joes, or is it a coaching issue from Saban running everyone off? I don't necessarily think it's Saban running everyone off, but it is, to me, it's coaching and development has been severely lacking, because all we heard, all these people who called me an idiot, Shane, it's the most talented roster in the country, you dummy. You know, they got this guy, we got that guy. This is the best offensive line. We got this 5-star, this 4-star. We added this transfer. The fact that Alabama's been having to be saved by transfers the last 3 seasons, that's when I knew that development was a huge issue.
Yeah.
And it has been. And I don't see any stars on this team at skill positions. I don't see any, you know, offensive linemen that stand out, even though they're all 5-stars essentially. I think it's development, because they get whoever the hell they want.
Yeah.
And they got more NIL than anybody.
Yeah.
And when the 1 year they didn't, they finished number 2. Oh, Saban complained, and they signed a number 1 class. I wonder how that happened, Shane.
Yeah.
I know how it happened, and everybody who doesn't have their head in the sand knows how it happened too. So, again, that's playing by the rules now, but everybody's playing by the same rules.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's a problem for Alabama, but it doesn't seem to be a problem for Georgia. You know what I mean? So I think it's development is the issue.
You're right. It's a team full of nobodies. And not that there aren't nobodies. They were studs growing up. 5-star. I mean, Kool-Aid. I mean, that's the only guy that outside of Alabama people probably recognize. Like, isn't that the kid from Alabama?
Yeah.
But that's not Alabama. Growing up, or just you go back to King Henry and Mark Ingram and, you know, all the defensive guys that have come through there. It's like you had 3 or 4 names that you knew, like those are some dudes, and that we're not seeing that from Alabama, which is unusual, even at running back. You know, so I'm gonna have to create a little bit of that, but I think it's more about the coaches, in my opinion. You talked about development. You know, we've seen this with businesses. We've all had that job where we're like, how did this manager get his job? You know, that's these coaches. and if nobody wants to work for that manager, you know, that department's going to suffer. And that's exactly what we have here. And maybe the CEO needs to come down here and do some soul searching and bring some folks in that can get them to the next level. And it may be names you don't want to see. It may be names you hate. But if they can get the best out of that department, then I think, honestly, after this year, we're going to have a rebuild. And it may still have Nick as the CEO, but underneath him, we've got to gut this thing out.
Yeah. All right, how about last one, Shane, from Merkin Mertz. I have to imagine he's a big Florida fan. Who is most likely to challenge Georgia for the East title. And for me, Shane, it's probably going to, well, no, I just threw a curveball my own way, but we'll see. We'll see how Mizzou responds. I bet that's probably your answer, but I think I'm going to go Kentucky. But hell, I think what will really dictate it in a week from now, Florida plays at Kentucky. I think the winner of that game is the answer. Who do you think is the biggest challenge to Georgia?
Ultimately, it comes down to Florida and Mizzou, in my opinion. I nothing against Kentucky, but I think Alabama is going to be bigger than they think, and maybe they make Alabama bigger than they are. Can they beat Bama? Absolutely. You've been on record saying this, but I'm thinking about an easier path, and I like Mizzou. They got LSU at home. Where's Florida LSU?
At LSU. Okay,
so let's make that the pivotal game that helps decide. Obviously, Georgia is in the path. You've got to where's those games?
I'm just looking at Florida's schedule though, because I know that we're trying to be optimistic. It's great. They're doing great, Shane. They got at Kentucky coming up, then Vandy, but then this is the critical part. At South Carolina, Georgia in Jacksonville, Arkansas, at LSU, at Missouri, Florida State. I mean, how in the hell are you going to survive that last six? 3-3 was probably a great record out of those six.
Yeah.
Considering it's at South Carolina, at LSU, at Missouri.
Second, I think we all agree that Georgia is the East. But that second tier, that second round,
could be anybody.
Anybody.
Could be Tennessee.
It is completely.
We didn't even say South Carolina. Could be South Carolina, Mizzou, anybody but Vanderbilt, essentially. You know what I mean?
That's exactly it. And Florida wasn't supposed to be in this, and now they're right there at the top. So
right,
and if they could catch Georgia, that's what it is. You got to catch Georgia off, and then you get a 2-game lead on them. So that's why it's going to be a wild year, brother.
Yep.
Everybody. Shit. It's going to be a wild year, brother.
Well, before we get to our interview, Shane, let's remind the audience we're brought to you by MyBookie. Head on over to mybookie.ag today and put in that promo code, that SEC, that's THAT-SEC, to get an instant 50% initial deposit bonus for all new users over at mybookie.ag today. And Shane, remember you calculated it. If someone just faded your picks, if they have signed up for MyBookie with what would you say, $100?
Yeah, I think I figured up on $200.
$200.
Yeah,
you get that instant 50. So you get $300 in your account today. You just fade Shane. Had you done that every single time so far this year, how much would be in their bank?
$38,000. That's like, you know what I'm saying? That's a nice Dodge Charger.
Yeah.
Saban, come on.
So head on over to mybookie.ag today. Put in that promo code, that SEC. Also brought to you by Game Time Sidekicks. Shane's got his Game Time Sidekicks. I got mine right here. We promise you will not be disappointed with your Game Time Sidekicks. Head on over to GameTimeSidekicks.com. This is officially licensed NCAA tumblers, cups. This is the outstanding quality. And you go to the checkout, you put in that promo code SEC. They'll give you 20% off your entire order over at Game Time Sidekicks. There's links to all of this in the show notes. Please help the show take advantage of these outstanding sponsorship opportunities.
I'll tell you this, man. That dog bowl, if you get it, it'll be the last one you ever buy. That thing is lasting forever. A lot longer than I will. I can already tell.
All right, buddy, let's kick it over to our interview. Outstanding stuff here. Pat Smith, one of our favorites over there at WJOX, 3-man front. Great conversation. All right, well, we're pleased to be joined by one of our favorites there, Pat Smith. Of course, you know him, co-host of 3-man front down there in JOX. Everybody knows the name JOX. That's an SEC football fanatic. And he's also the co-founder of the Paul Feinbaum Show. Pat, thank you so much.
Paul who? Who was that?
Yeah, just a guy. I think that's another day.
I think you're familiar with him. Yeah, I think you're familiar with him. Yeah.
So Pat, we haven't seen you since media days. It's an honor to have you back on the show. Thank you so much.
No, the pleasure is all mine. And what in the world could you want to talk about? What is going on, right, with the Alabama Crimson Tide? So, no, I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, you're as plugged in as anybody down there, so I knew I had to talk to you. And speaking of Feinbaum, I've heard him reference it. I think everybody by now knows who Josh Pate is. I've heard him reference it, so I wanted to go directly to you, Pat, and just share what you have heard. Because like I said, I've heard multiple people hear this, and I don't know, so that's why I'm asking you. Was there any kind of revolt? I don't know if that's the right word. Did players kind of quit during that South Florida game? What's your read on what happened there in that just ugly, ugly win last weekend?
Well, it was ugly, to say the very least. One of the worst ones that we've seen since Nick Saban has been at the University of Alabama. But to answer your question with a very short answer, no, there wasn't a revolt. The bottom line is that this offense is still trying to figure itself out. Tommy Rees is trying to get its sea legs, so to speak, in regards to what they're going to do. I've talked to a lot of people because there have been a lot of rumors flying around about Jalen Milroe. Was he suspended? Is that why you didn't see him for the game? Of course, he was on the sideline cheering his teammates on. I truly believe, Mike, what happened in that football game is they're still trying to figure some stuff out. But if you look at their schedule and before you got into SEC play, this really was the last opportunity for them to try to see what they had with Buckner and with Ty Simpson. And lo and behold, they didn't think that they were going to be in a dogfight with South Florida. The offensive line didn't play well at all. They got no momentum going from the quarterback play. It came a flood. The field was a mess. There was a lot of extenuating circumstances that took place in the game. But as far as any type of player revolt, now the players did have a player-only meeting on Sunday afternoon, but that's because they don't believe that they're playing up to the standard that many people around the Alabama football program believe that they're playing at right now. So to answer your question, revolt, no. Is everybody a little bit irritated about the way that they have performed? Yes. A lot of people looking in the mirror trying to figure out where they go from here. But from a quarterbacking situation on Saturday, they firmly believe that that was going to be their last opportunity to see who was going to be that backup to Jalen Milroe. And I think they got their answer based on how poorly Buckner played.
So is it safe to assume that, they're just all aboard now with Jalen Milroe moving forward? And, how paramount is it that Tommy Rees makes some adjustments to play to the strengths of Jalen Milroe, something I think he struggled mightily to do in that Texas game?
No doubt. It's very important. Not only is it the first SEC game, but it's the first game being at home since after the Texas debacle. And that's exactly what it was. You were ahead in the fourth quarter, but for whatever reason, you couldn't add on points. Defense didn't play well. You saw what happened. It's very important to, Tommy Rees was hired because he is this great new mind in college football from an offensive standpoint. And unfortunately for Alabama fans, they haven't seen that the first few weeks. Booger McFarland is ripping the guy a new one on the broadcast on ABC on Saturday, and a lot of fans feel the exact same way. I think they would take Bill O'Brien back this week on my radio show. Yes, that's what you're hearing. I'll bring back Bill O'Brien. Belichick's going to get rid of him, bring him back to Tuscaloosa. So it's just funny how this works out. But you've got to see, I think Bama fans want to see, they understand it's not Bryce Young. They understand that you don't have Devontae Smith or Mechie or Williams. They know that they don't have that. But they got to see some downfield operation. They got to see him make some better choices. And they believe Rees has not put them in the best possible situation to be successful. And so it is vitally important on Saturday, especially against Lane Kiffin and Pete Golding, that they do that.
Now, you hit on an important part there, Pat, because this is why I kind of started the whole decaying dynasty type deal where are these playmakers? Because it's not like they're adding 5 stars at receivers and running back, and maybe that's part of the equation. It shouldn't all be on Jalen Milroe. Maybe it's not all on Tommy Rees, but where are all these playmakers? Because the last several years, it seems like the only time Alabama has one is when they bring one in via transfer. There seems to be a massive issue in either developing or identifying players that can come in here and contribute. Where are the playmakers for Alabama?
That is the $1 million question. Don't mean to throw out an NIL idea of $1 million wide receiver. But it basically comes down, in my opinion, to development. They've had no problems getting these 4 and 5 stars to Tuscaloosa, as you've just mentioned. But for whatever reason, they get them on campus, and over the course of the last 2 to 3 years, they have not been developed to the level that you saw the Devontae Smith, the Jerry Judys of the world, or the Waddles. Just you don't see that. You have a lot of talent down there, and I think that's why it's so perplexing to a lot of people around the program. Why is this guy not taking that next step up? And I think that also now goes to the position coaches. Why are you continuing to not have those guys being developed? And I think you have to have a hard look at that coaching staff and what they need to do to try to get these guys in that ability to be the next go-to guy. Because as you see the recruiting rankings, Mike, all the time, just like it's not like Alabama's 25th in recruiting. I mean, they're bringing in some top talent at that position, but for whatever reason, the last 2 or 3 years, they're not being developed. And at this point in time, you have to say that is on the coaching for not being able to take those guys to the next level.
Mm-hmm. And how surprised are you by the struggles from the offensive line? I know your colleague down there at JOX, Cole Kublik. Mm-hmm. I lean on him when it comes to this stuff.
We all do.
I'm not qualified to break down offensive line to his level. And again, we don't need to bury him, but he led many people, and not just him, but many people touted this offensive line, and it's not been there. And when they hired Eric Wolford from Kentucky, I heard Kentucky was happy that he was gone. Now, you take it with a grain of salt, because that's something I hear a lot when someone leaves. And this wasn't just fans. This was coming from within that building. Do we have an issue, do you think, at offensive line coach? And back to my original question, how surprised are you that they're struggling to this degree?
Struggling to this degree, we're all extremely shocked by it. And the reason why is because before fall camp got started, you heard Nick Saban multiple times bring up, hey guys, we have 7 or 8 guys that we believe can compete on that offensive line. And so everyone's thinking, okay, it's about to be back to joyless murder ball. That's what we kept hearing. It's going to be bully ball. Alabama's going to line up 2 tight end sets. They're going to run it down your throat. They're going to control the clock. So you don't have to have Bryce Young at quarterback. You don't have to have Jalen Milroe throw for 350 yards a game. You line up with the running back core that they have. The running back room is one of the most talented in the SEC. You put them behind the biggest offensive line in all of college football, bigger than a lot of NFL offensive lines. They're going to be able to play smash mouth football. They're going to be able to put a hat on hat, and they're going to push you around, and it's bully ball. We have not seen that. We didn't see it in the Middle Tennessee State game. Texas had more talent on the field than Alabama did. We certainly didn't see it against South Florida. My goodness, tied 3-3, and you're trying to run the ball. You're not dominating in the trenches at all. So you have to go back, just like we talked about wide receiver, Mike. You have to raise a question about the way that they're coaching, because you're starting a freshman at left tackle who was, supposed to come in here and be the next first rounder from the offensive line. And he's given up week after week, multiple sacks. Bama gives up 5 sacks to South Florida last week in Tampa. It's concerning, very concerning. An Alabama team has never given up as many sacks as they have over the course of the first 3 games of the season. So they're looking at everything down there. And when I say everything, I know Lane Kiffin brought up the whole who's calling the defensive signals. Is it Kevin Steele? Is it T-Rob? Like, what is going on? I think Nick Saban is taking a hard look, and it's tough to do in the middle of a season, but I think that there is a process going on. We like to use that word down here, process. It's what Nick uses all the time, of evaluating everything, because you have to right now, because this team, it's one thing losing to Texas. It's another thing when you go on the road and play one of the worst FBS teams over the course of the last 5 years, and you put forth the effort that you did. Defense was lights out. But offensively speaking, one of the worst performances we've seen Alabama offensively wise since Nick Saban has been in Tuscaloosa since 2007.
Right. Well, I'm glad you referenced, I had to ask you about Kiffin and his comments with Kevin Steele and everything. And I have it, Pat, from multiple people that that was a planted question that Kiffin wanted asked so he could give that response. Now, again, that's not to bury the person that asked the question. I don't really care about that. The point being is Kiffin wanted this out there to start this week, big week for him and his program. and now he knew that was something that Nick Saban was going to have to deal with all week. What's your thoughts on that? This whole debacle here.
I will tell you this: covering Lane Kiffin when he was in Tuscaloosa, who was one of the best offensive coordinators. I still believe Sarkisian, by the way, was a better offensive coordinator, and I think he proved that against Alabama in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I think he was a better offensive coordinator at Bama than Lane Kiffin was. But I think Lane Kiffin was sitting on the back porch with his dog Juice, and he knew at 12 noon on Monday that Nick Saban was going to get riled up and that he was going to have to address what Lane Kiffin dropped just happenstance on a Sunday night, that, oh, yeah, doesn't look like Kevin Steele is calling plays anymore. And knowing that Kevin Steele and Nick Saban are cut from the same cloth and they've been coaching together numerous times throughout their career, that Nick Saban was probably going to take the bait, and he did. He got trolled. He took the bait. He talked about it, and I could just see Lane Kiffin sitting on his back veranda before he gave his Monday afternoon press conference, and he's patting Juice on the head, and he's saying, I got him, didn't I, boy? I got him, didn't I? Yep, this is great. And he's just sitting there just like twiddling his thumbs going, this worked perfectly. Because then Kiffin can come out at his press conference and said, well, I wasn't trying to raise any questions or anything, No. We all know over here in Alabama that he would walk on broken glass to get the Alabama job the moment Nick Saban decides that he wants to retire. I don't think he's going to get the job at Alabama, but he wants the job. So anyway, it's not surprising that he did that. I've talked to a lot of people in Tuscaloosa. There's no indication that there has been a change at the defensive coordinator position. Obviously, the rainstorm and everything that took place there in the stadium, there was some communication issues. And, T-Rob was doing what he was doing on the sideline because Kevin Steele's up top in the booth. So it's just Lane being Lane. Remember, he loves to tell everybody to get the popcorn out. And that's just what we're used to over here when it comes to Lane Kiffin.
Do you think Kiffin will have some tough questions to answer with that fan base, though? After this, the trolling and talking a big game, and they lay an egg on Saturday, and Alabama, hypothetically beats Ole Miss once again. I can't imagine this shtick is going to go over well if he just keeps losing in these big games.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Mike. And the other thing to always keep in mind is that last year when there was this flirtation with Auburn, that the Ole Miss people, they stepped up big time. They stepped up big time in NIL. They stepped up by a commitment that you have never seen from an Ole Miss coach, including the one that went to a Final Four that they just hired. The level of the monetary investment that they have in that program now is unheard of for a guy and for a program that has never been to an SEC championship game. So, at some point, he is going to have to start winning these type games. You and I both know in this conference, it is great, whether it's Shane Beamer putting out Soulja Boy videos or Lane Kiffin tweeting out Taylor Swift videos. Man, that's fantastic. I love it. In the sports talk business, I love it. I welcome it. But when you don't win games and you don't win championships, that fan base is going to go, you know what? This isn't as cute as I thought it was, because at the end of the day, when they're writing those checks for NIL and for Lane Kiffin to stay in Oxford, they want to see a competitive team, not just someone that wins the Egg Bowl, but they want to see somebody that can knock on the door to Atlanta and knock on the door for the college football playoff. So this is a big step for him this weekend. And if he doesn't win against probably, let's just be honest, probably one of the weaker Alabama teams that you've seen in a very long time in Tuscaloosa, the question is, when's he ever going to win? So I think that's the question that Ole Miss fans will have to answer if they don't get a win on Saturday.
Yeah, so clearly a lot of pressure on Kiffin, but I think a ton of pressure on Alabama too. Would you agree with this, Pat, that if they lose this game, because I think they got much more difficult games remaining, I think the wheels could come off here. Is that fair, or am I jumping the gun a little bit?
No, I don't think you're jumping the gun at all, Mike, because the way that these rosters are put together now, and because of all the options that certain players have, and until you get to next year where you have an expanded playoff, let's just be honest, if you lose 2 games, you're out of the college football playoff. No team has ever been awarded a spot in the CFP with 2 losses, so it's not going to happen. Then at that juncture, you've got a loss in the SEC. Then you've got much more tougher opponents coming up on the road, whether it's Texas A&M, you got to go to Auburn, Don't forget you got Tennessee and you got LSU at home. So this schedule's a very tough one. And if you can't get this one at home against Ole Miss, then yeah, this one could be one that we have not seen since 2007 in regards to this Alabama football team. It starts becoming much more difficult to find wins on that schedule, and then you just don't know the psyche or the mentality of the kids on this roster moving forward if you're not playing for an SEC West or a chance to go to the CFP.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not putting this out till Thursday, Pat. Have you made a prediction for the game? Ole Miss at Alabama. Who do you think wins?
I think this is going to be a low 30s type game. I think Bama squeaks it out, final 33-31.
Okay. Oh, scoring everything. I like it. So I did want to ask you real quickly here about Auburn, too, going to Texas A&M. That's a big game, obviously, undefeated Auburn, but they've not yet been tested. What's your confidence level that they can go on the road and compete with Texas A&M this weekend?
It's very low. And the reason why is because Hugh Freeze has done a tremendous job rebuilding this roster. He has mended the bridges, the fences with all the high schools that Brian Harsin torched because he didn't have a relationship with. He's brought in 40 guys that he's tried to manage with this roster. The problem with Auburn is they're still trying to find their way offensively. Yes, this is a step in the right direction from an SEC roster, but when you look at Texas's roster and then you look at what's coming up with Georgia's roster and what's coming up with LSU's roster, the next few weeks could be very painful for Auburn fans, but they also understand that this is part of taking the medicine to be able to next year to be able to potentially compete for maybe a CFP or get to an SEC championship game. I think it's going to be rough. I think it's going to be tough to go to College Station this week, the way that Bobby Petrino and that offense has been clicking. Auburn's still trying to find its way offensively, but more than anything, Auburn has got a lot of injuries on that football team right now. And so I'm just really not sure if they've got enough Jimmies and Joes as of right now for this weekend to compete at the level that they think that they should be able to compete at. It could be a rough next couple of weeks, Mike, but this Auburn program is definitely trending in the right direction.
No, I agree with everything you just said. That's a very sensible take, but sensible and Jimbo and A&M do not belong in the same sentence. So if
I know you've been all over him, I know you have been. And listen, the Bobby Petrino thing here in the state of Alabama, with Bobby Petrino trying to stab Tommy Tuberville in the back to get the job with Jetgate when he was at Louisville, trust me, all that stuff. But you do have to give them at least credit. I know the schedule might not be murderer's row when it comes to college football, but at least from an offensive standpoint, they've at least put up, I believe I read, the most points in 3 games. It took them 7 games last year to get to the point total that they're currently at. So Auburn is a little concerned about that.
I'm just saying, if they lose, someone's getting fired. And Jimbo may already be on the hottest seat in the country. It's going to be scorching hot if he loses to this Auburn team at home this weekend. Those are my words, not yours.
Well, I will say this, and not. We've talked to a lot of people around that Auburn program, and even Hugh Freeze kind of hinted about it earlier this week. Most Auburn people do not believe that they can go down there with this rendition of an Auburn football team and beat Texas A&M. If they do walk out of there with a win, I subscribe to what you're saying. Because it's one thing going to Miami and losing to a good Miami Hurricanes team, but it's another thing in your own backyard to get beat by an Auburn team whose roster is just put together with as many transfer portal guys as you could possibly find, and a quarterback situation that if Alabama wasn't having all the quarterback problems in Tuscaloosa, the Auburn quarterback issue would be the bigger story. But unfortunately, right now, especially in this state, it's about Alabama not playing to the standard that we're used to seeing.
Right. Now, Pat, before you go, can you tell my audience how to follow you online and how to check out the show 3-Man Front? That's where I go for all my Alabama and Auburn news that ESPN national people break. They break the news a couple days after you guys already broke it.
Well, I appreciate that. Yes, you can listen to us, me and Landrum Roberts, Conrad Van Order, Molly Robinson. We got a great show, fun show, 10 to 2 every day. You can go to joxfm.com, listen daily. You can follow me on Twitter at Pat Smith Radio. I try to put out some fun things, not as humorous as you and cousin Shane, but I try. I try to do what I can. Is Shane okay? I've seen he's been walking a lot lately. Is he good?
He is not okay. I'll just be honest with you. He is struggling today after that 13-mile consecutive.
That 13-mile.
I tried to cheat it. I tried to think of ways and he said no. I'm doing it, and
good for him.
Yeah, it was a sight to behold.
You know, and I can give you a little behind the scenes, little talk. And next time you're on Feinbaum, you can bring this up. So, you know, Feinbaum had a bet years ago, and he made the statement that if Auburn beat Alabama, this is during Pat Dye's regime. He said, you know, I will drive a tractor from Birmingham, Alabama to Auburn, Alabama, you know, if Auburn beats Alabama. Well, Auburn beat Alabama. And so the way Paul got around it is that Paul drove to Auburn in his car, then got on a tractor right outside Jordan-Hare Stadium, and then rode in for the photo op with Coach Pat Dye. So I didn't know if cousin Shane actually did the 13, or you got a video of him starting, and then at 13, he's all, you know, you spritz him with water, and then all of a sudden, you know, he's 13 miles. So good for cousin Shane.
No, it was legit. So I do appreciate the kind words, and I'll tell cousin Shane you say hello.
Please do, Mike. My pleasure, brother. Anytime.
Man, what a legend Pat is. You know, I mean, great stuff from him, and always have a good time with him.
You know, and I got to meet him for the first time at Media Days. Really cool guy.
Yeah,
a lot of stories. I mean, this guy has seen it all. You know, so I really appreciate that interview, and he you know, he got me thinking. Do you think Lane Kiffin, like if you were to get True Serum and it's just him and you talking, do you think in his mind that Alabama is realistically an opportunity for him in the future?
I bet Lane thinks that, yeah.
Yeah. Because and doing these games, you know, saying this stuff, kind of getting the fan base ticked off a little bit.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
I felt it with that there. Do you feel like that's hurting his odds? I mean,
maybe that's why he's doing it, Shane, because he wants that job and he's not on the list.
Yeah.
That could be part of it, you know?
Yeah, I just wonder.
He's a guy that's been I don't want to say handed, but he's had wild opportunities that other coaches don't get. Hell, his first job, I think he was like 31. He was the head coach of the Raiders.
Yeah.
Didn't even do well, and then he got Tennessee.
Yeah.
Then he got, you know what I mean? Like
Southern Cal, dream jobs, yeah.
I mean, and he's not done anything to earn those.
Right.
Now, I think he's doing a hell of a job at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I imagine a guy like that who's son of a coaching legend. He'd be pretty pissed.
Better offensive coordinator, Lane Kiffin or Sarkisian?
I'd go Kiffin.
Kiffin?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think people get so mad when I say this, Shane. I think the COVID year, that was like a complete bullshit year.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, Jimbo was good coach that year. You know, there was half fans, quarter fans in the stands.
Yeah.
Players were quitting left and right. They were just calling it opt out. That was quitting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unique schedule. Yeah. I mean, he was great that year. I hand it to him.
Yeah.
But he also had an all-star roster surrounded by, you know, again, teams that were quitting left and right. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I just shat on their entire 2020 championship, but it is what it is. Well, hey, our other interview, Shane, want to kick it over to the Ole Miss side. Our buddy Michael Katz from a DJ Journal. Let's kick it over to him. All right. Hey, we're pleased to be joined by Professor. I think I have to call him Professor now. Professor Michael Katz from the DJ Journal, covers Ole Miss for the Northwest Mississippi DJ Journal, of course. Michael, my man, how's it going?
Good, man. Just, as always, another normal week covering Ole Miss.
And, you know, I don't want to get too into the weeds. And, again, feel free, if you don't want to talk about any of this, we don't have to. But it's my understanding, Michael, that this all started on like a Sunday teleconference type deal where I believe this is even new. And the point of it is, all right, let's close out the previous game, and then on Monday we'll get into the upcoming one. And right off the bat, let's talk Nick Saban, and not only that, but my God, the probably the coach comment of the year so far with the Kevin Steele stuff. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, so it's funny the way it happened because we had been told leading in that maybe it's a possibility that we would start doing these teleconferences, and I understand it. Like I understand that's how coaches work, right? Mm-hmm. That game is done. I don't want to talk about it anymore, and I understand that. But we found out like Sunday afternoon, maybe like an hour and a half before, it was like, hey, like we're doing the teleconference today. I was like, oh, all right, well, okay, I'm around. Like I can zoom in, and like you said, we were under the impression that it was going to be, let's talk about the last game, let's finish up Georgia Tech, and next day when we meet with him in person, we can move on to the Alabama stuff. And like you said, like the very first question was about facing Kevin Steele's defense. And Lane dropped the grenade that he doesn't think that he's calling the plays and that it was somebody else. And it opened up this whole thing. And I've been thinking a lot about why he would say it. And I think there's a part of it that there's a little gamesmanship. I think anything you can do to ruffle feathers or get people talking. Now, would it be my move? No, not if I knew what Alabama had done to that team in the past few years. But especially like this is I guess a quote unquote vulnerable Alabama team. It's not maybe the one that we've seen in recent years. Not yet anyway. Just get ready for the game. Just let it. No, then there's no need for any of that stuff. And it's interesting because Lane does have so much respect for Saban. He is indebted to Nick Saban. He has said that. Right. He has said that he hired him right after he got fired from my alma mater on the tarmac, and really kind of saved his career to an extent. And there's a lot of respect there. And I know that Lane, I know that there's mutual respect, but I also think that there's always the chance that Lane is gonna do something, and this was that something, and I don't know what it's gonna do. It's certainly entertaining because we were all sitting there and we're like, wait, did he just say that? And then just like kept going, right. And then it was like, yeah, like I don't know what happened between now and the Texas game, but it looks different, and I was just like, can't believe we're doing this right now. And of course, then somebody had to ask Saban about it, and Saban, of course, and I think that's part of it too. Is you want Saban to, you have to deal with stuff. There's so much gamesmanship going on. It's never normal when Ole Miss plays Alabama, and this will be my third one. This is the weirdest start, I think. And of course, I don't think anything will ever beat right before the game in 2021 with the get your popcorn ready and then losing 42-21. That's probably takes the cake still.
And then adding another layer to the whole thing. This is the last thing I'll ask you about this, I promise. And I don't want to put you in an awkward spot, so you don't have to call out anybody, or you don't even have to confirm or anything. But I've been told that was a planted question. Would you believe that?
I mean, listen, I know this kind of stuff happens. I mean, yeah. I think it happens everywhere. I can't confirm it because I don't know. The person who asked it, I haven't asked them, and I don't want to assume like the worst in that situation. But I
think the point being though is that Kiffin wanted that out there. That's the whole point.
That's an interesting way to look at it, right? Like, say it was, that's the grenade that you're throwing out there 6 days before. It's insane. Again, it's never normal here. Again, like we logged off afterward, and like we have like a group text, and we were like, "Are we really doing this? Like, really? Come on."
Now let me ask you this, because again, we forget quickly. We live in no one can remember hardly anything that happened last week, let alone last season. But I mean, it seemed like a lot of fans were pissed at Lane Kiffin for all the Auburn drama. He could have squashed that. Now he had his reasons not to do it. Now everybody's back on board. We're 3-0. We're going into Alabama. We're feeling good. I don't want to look ahead too much, but if Ole Miss has another, get your popcorn ready, and then they get blown out by Alabama, I mean, are there going to be fans that are saying, what in the hell is this guy doing with all? I mean, this is great for guys like me and you and fans to talk about all week, but if they just have an egg on the field in Tuscaloosa, I mean, I don't think it's going to be that cute to the fans.
Yeah, I mean, that's this is the fourth year, and there's no question that this program is in a way better place than it was when he got there. It was messy when he got there, and it's in a good place. It's consistent, but there still isn't that win that you look to that says that's the one where they turn the corner, or that's the one that you can hang your hat on. I know, and obviously they went 10-2 his second year and made the Sugar Bowl and all that stuff, but they lost a couple big games that year. They lost at Auburn, and they got it handed to them in Tuscaloosa, and then obviously lost the Sugar Bowl. But you can't really blame them for Corral getting hurt in that one.
Right.
But that year it was they beat Texas A&M, right? That was the game day was here. Well, A&M didn't really end up being the team that we thought they were going to be, and then last year they beat a top 10 Kentucky team. Well, Kentucky didn't really end up being the team people thought either, and winning at A&M, same kind of thing. And so I think I think the way that the Alabama game went last year, that they had it. I mean, it was right there. They're inside the red zone, chance to win at home, end all the drama, finally get it off, get it off his chest, and it didn't work. And that was one of the moments you look to when things kind of went off the rails a little bit. They started at LSU, but then they did win that Texas A&M game the next week. And you thought, okay, they bounced back. And then Alabama happened. And I think just the way, that was, I think, so demoralizing to lose that game when you had it right there. And you had the chance to beat Bryce Young and Nick Saban at home. And, I think that would have gone a long way for this program. And they didn't do it. And things went off the rails from there. And so I think there's, I think would this win change everything? I don't know, because they were a New Year's Six team a couple years ago, and I don't know if that's what this year's team is, but I do know that there is something to be said for exercising past demons, and Alabama is always one of those. And the last really good coach at Ole Miss was able to do that. And I think now that guy is at Auburn and he's known for being the quote unquote Alabama killer, he did it twice or whatever.
Known for other things as well.
Well, yes, but those are not suitable for podcasts. Not this podcast anyway. Oh, maybe they are, but I'm not going to get into it. But I think when the last guy, or I guess two guys ago, the last main guy did it, there's a lot of pressure on you to be like, well, why can't you do it too? You've brought all this positive attention to us, and you have us. Everybody's talking about us. Like, it has to show up sometime. Like, there has to be the result. And I think, they've got a chance to do that coming up real soon, because you've got Alabama, and you get LSU at home. And, a couple weeks ago, everybody thought LSU was broken. And now all of a sudden, it just turns out Florida State was pretty good. Right. And LSU is looking really good again. And then you get Arkansas at home, and that's always, again, a normal one. And then you get a bye week, and then you get to go to Auburn, which I'm sure will be nothing but pleasantries. And so there's just this stretch coming up where if you can win a few of those, I think you've got a chance to really sort of cement your brand, like your name on the program. Not like it already isn't. Everybody knows this is Lane Kiffin's program right now. But I think it's a chance to do something that's eluded them thus far. And again, like winning Tuscaloosa, it's hard, but Ole Miss has done it again. The guy at Auburn did it, and so, and this is as of right now, this Bryce Young isn't there, and Lane has said he's kind of joking, but he's thankful that Bryce isn't there anymore, because Bryce won that game for them last year. Alabama did not play very well. Bryce really kind of bailed them out, and so the opportunity's there. At some point, you got to seize it, right?
And I think you could certainly make the case, Michael, that the best player on the field on Saturday is going to be Quinshon Judkins. Let me ask you this, though. How surprised are you that he's not really gotten going? And do you put that more on his, he's nagging injuries, or do you put that on the offensive line of the Ole Miss Rebels?
I think there's a couple parts here. One is he is banged up, and of course we don't know exactly what that is, because again, it's like trying to get the nuclear codes to figure out injuries. But he was in a non-contact jersey last week. We saw that, and so we knew there was something going on. And I think it was 13 carries for 37 yards last week. I don't think he's had more than 60 in a game yet. He's scoring touchdowns, but this is an offense that averaged 256.5 yards rushing per game last year. I mean, it was the top in the SEC, I think, number 3 nationally, and first among all non-triple option-ish kind of teams. That's what Ole Miss does under Lane. A lot of people talk about the quarterback stuff, but they run the ball, and they run it really, really well, and they do it a lot of different ways. And I think the injuries, yes. I don't think the offensive line has necessarily played its best yet. And I know it was better against Georgia Tech. I think they rushed for 299 in that game. But Jaxson Dart had 136 of those. And so it wasn't Q. Ulysses Bentley, I think, had 6 carries for 61. So that was a nice thing to see, at least some running back reduction, explosiveness. But I don't think the offensive line's played its best game yet. But I also think I think teams know if you are going to beat Ole Miss, at least the game plan coming into the year, if you shut down the run, put it in the quarterback's hands and see what happens. And thus far, Jaxson Dart has been awesome. He has thrived. He has taken the game over. He is, that Georgia Tech game, and he did whatever he had to do. I think he had 49 passing yards in the first half, 202 in the second half. Was dynamic running the ball. I mean, he was that guy, and he's been that guy through 3 games. And so, I think part of it is teams they knew coming in that your best chance to stop the offense was to gear up to shut down the run. The problem is now the passing game is pretty good, and depending on what pieces are back this week, Trey Harris I think he has 8 catches this year and 5 are touchdowns. He didn't play last week. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week. Zachary Franklin hasn't played yet. The UTSA transfer, Caden Prescore, and the Memphis transfer hasn't played yet. Those guys practiced, those 2 guys practiced when we were there a couple days ago. If you get those guys back, it's now you got to stop the passing game, and if you try to shut that down, that's going to open up Quinshon. But again, I think health is a factor, but I think it's the fact that I think teams know that your best chance to shut down the offense is to shut down the run. Right.
Well, you mentioned Jaxson Dart. I had to ask you about him. You're right. He's played great. He's done it multiple ways. He was, the key reason they beat Tulane, but he, much like Kiffin, I think he's going to be judged on how he does on Saturday. And that doesn't mean they got to win, but if he doesn't have a good game, they're not going to win. And it's probably going to take his best game to date to get a win in Tuscaloosa. So is it fair that he'll be judged based on Saturday's performance? And if he does have a big game, if they do win, is it time to maybe start the Jaxson Dart for Heisman campaign?
Well, I believe you're the one who had him at the top of your SEC quarterbacks list to start the season, correct?
I have number 3, yeah.
Number 3? Okay. You were higher on him the most. And I felt pretty good that he was going to have a good year. I just know that Jaxson is just, one, he was so young last year. It's a tough situation. He's grown up a lot. He just looks so comfortable, and quarterbacks are getting a lot better in year two under Lane. But fair or not, quarterbacks get judged for wins and losses, even if it's not all on them. And like when you look at historic quarterbacks, you look at moments, right? You think of that throw against such and such on 4th down. You think of that run where they picked up the first to keep a drive going that led to the game winning, whatever it is. Like when people think of Matt Corral, they think of that rushing game against Tennessee where he ran for God knows how many yards on like a bum leg. Like that was one of Matt Corral's moments, right? I think we're always looking, and that's partly probably the sports writer's fault too. We're always looking for a narrative. We're looking for a moment, and Dart's been so good this year, and he has really picked them up, but he's going to have so many chances for that moment in Tuscaloosa. And like you said, I don't think there's any way they win. I'm not saying he has to throw for 400 yards, but I think he has to play clean. He can't turn the ball over. He can't fumble. He has to make good decisions. He has to be a factor in the run game. And he's done all of those things so far. But this is going to be a little bit different. And I think that if Ole Miss is going to win, he has to play a really, really clean game. The numbers will probably look pretty good too. But I think it'll be one of those things where if Ole Miss wins, you're going to look back and say, wow, Jaxson Dart had a hell of a game. And it might not show up for 350 yards and 5 touchdowns, but you're going to say he had some throws that really changed momentum or kept drives alive and really kind of sunk Alabama's defense. And yeah, I mean, if he does that, it's, everybody loves quarterbacks in the SEC, and there hasn't really been one who's stood out quite yet. It's been a weird year for SEC quarterbacks, that. And so I mean, there's a chance here to really kind of seize the reins if he has a good game.
Now, I know it's early, and they've only played a couple games. And the toughest game they played at Tulane, they didn't even have their starting quarterback. So we have to make those notes. But can you tell, what's different with a Pete Golding defense after 3 games for Ole Miss? Anything in particular stand out to you?
It's funny because the first play against Mercer was a touchdown, right? It was a 75-yard quarterback rush up the middle. And we all just looked at each other and were like, we're doing this again? The last guy did this. But I think the biggest thing has been adjustments for the most part. In those first 2 games, the defense made adjustments. And that was sometimes a problem the last few years was, the defense would kind of just keep doing the same thing, even if it wasn't working. Pete's really smart. He makes adjustments, and I think he understands what he has. Now, Georgia Tech was a little concerning because they mounted a little bit of a rally in that late third, early fourth quarter before it kind of got out of hand again. So that's really the first time where the adjustments maybe didn't look as good as they had, but I think adjustments have been really big. I also think that playing with, they change up their alignments more than they used to. I know people had a lot of thoughts on the 3-2-6. For better or worse, sometimes it works, and sometimes teams will run for 300 yards against you. So now it's interesting looking at a depth chart because what do you really learn that much from the depth chart? Usually not. It's usually smoke and mirrors, and a guy who's out for the season might be at the top still. But week 1, you had a guy listed as defensive end. Week 2, he was listed as an outside linebacker. So you can sort of see like the formational shifts. They're adjusting based on opponent, which isn't something that they really did the last couple of years. And Golding told us he was going to do that they don't have a quote unquote like base set. Like they're not always going to be a four-man front. It's really going to depend what's happening week to week, play to play, all that kind of stuff. And I think we're seeing that. So I think adjustments have been really big. Has it been perfect? No. And I think that part of that is they got so many new players on defense. The transfer portal, we all know how big Ole Miss is on that. And it's evident on defense when, all of your linebackers for the most part are new. So many of your defensive backs are brand new. There's bound to be some mishaps, right? But I think for the most part, it's been pretty good. It hasn't been perfect, and I think part of it is part of it's scheme, and I think part of it is Pete Golding is he's had a lot of talent when he's in the defenses he's had for the last few years. I don't know if that's where Ole Miss is quite yet, and I think they probably admit that too. They've got some recruiting to do on that front, and so I think part of it is learning what you have and learning where guys fit the best. But I think adjustments have been pretty solid for the most part.
All right, moment of truth, Michael. Who wins a game? Ole Miss at Alabama. Have you made a prediction yet?
I did. I've thought about changing it, but I'm a man of my word. I'm gonna do it, and I've never been wrong ever. I have Bama by a field goal. I think I had 27-24. It's just I know there are so many reasons why Ole Miss can win this game, and I think they can, and I think it's going to be a really good game. And I know Texas just beat them in Tuscaloosa, but Texas it's a really good Texas team, and they've got a dude at quarterback too. It's just hard for me to see them losing, especially like that game last week against South Florida was so bad. Like, what are the odds they play like that 3 weeks in a row?
Right.
It's hard to imagine, especially in Tuscaloosa. I know that there's a lot of emotions in this game. I know Ole Miss is going to be up for it, but I think Alabama probably is feeling this is important for them too. Like the Ole Miss game isn't always big for them. This is big for them because if they lose, the SEC West race is a lot harder. And so I think the stakes are high for them this time. And so I think they're going to be up for it. Again, winning in Tuscaloosa is hard. I think Milroe, I know it hasn't always been pretty and he's not Bryce Young, but I think he's going to break open the game a few times. And I think that's going to really, really frustrate Ole Miss's defense. Running quarterbacks are just so devastating. And he's he's not perfect throwing the ball, but man, he's really dangerous with the ball in his hands, and I think that could be a problem for Ole Miss. So I think it's close, and I think it's one of those ones where the fourth quarter, someone has a chance to seize it, and I could see Ole Miss, pulling out the late touchdown, or I could see, Alabama kicking the late field goal. There's just, I could see it happening either way, but I think it's going to be close, and I think Alabama's going to win it. But this should actually be a popcorn game.
Well, thoughts and prayers to you, Michael, if Ole Miss wins it, and then we'll start to hear Saban's retiring, Kiffin to Alabama rumors will run rampant, and you'll be all over that for weeks and weeks. So
it's just another September, October at Ole Miss.
Yeah. Before you go, could you tell the audience where can they find your work and give you a follow?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at djournal.com, and if you are bold enough to follow the bad takes on the website formerly known as Twitter, at Michael L. Katz, Katz.
All right, Chase, so another great one. 2 great interviews leading up to this awesome game. And I've already got a stunt planned for this one specifically. But y'all going to have to tune in 6 o'clock Eastern, 5 Central, Thursday, as we make our SEC weekend predictions. Got anything, brother, before we hop off the line?
No, good stuff. Appreciate those guys coming on and shedding some light. Man, how awesome it'd be to follow Lane Kiffin, and then you look up the street and then see what Mississippi State's having to deal with. You know what I'm saying? It's like we're following Lane, and we had all the controversy last year about leaving Auburn, and to go from Coach Luke to this, it seems like that never a dull moment down there in Oxford. So, but no, this is shaping up to be a pretty exciting game, and like you said, you may want to actually get your popcorn ready for this one.
Yeah, I can't wait. I just want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right, see you guys. Go Vols.